The Galactic Council chamber was a vast circular hall with walls lined with holographic projections of distant stars and planets. Representatives from over 100 species sat in their designated places, each one unique in appearance, physiology, and culture, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of debate as they argued over the latest technological advancements. Some species prided themselves on their breakthroughs in hyperdrive efficiency, others boasted about their mastery of quantum communication. But in one quiet corner of the room, the human delegation sat, heads bowed, eyes scanning their data pads as if struggling to keep up with the conversation. In reality, the humans were not struggling at all. Their neural interfaces had already absorbed every piece of information before the first words were even spoken. Their artificial intelligence systems, embedded within their suits, had dissected, analyzed, and improved every so-called breakthrough long before it was even presented. The humans knew the real value of the information in this room was not in what was being shared, but in what was being hidden. Every species held secrets, desperate to gain an edge in the never-ending dance of politics and war, and humans were no exception, except they played the game better than anyone else. Ambassador Renna lifted her head, just slightly, allowing her gaze to drift over the other species in attendance, her expression carefully neutral. She had perfected the look of quiet concentration and mild curiosity, a look that made others assume humanity was still finding its footing among the stars, a species that had only recently joined the galactic community, eager to learn, but far from a major player. But behind that carefully crafted facade, Renna's mind was already 5 steps ahead of every being in the room. The Drekvara, a warlike reptilian species, were boasting about their latest improvements in energy shield technology, claiming their barriers were now impervious to all known projectile and energy-based weapons. Renna resisted the urge to smirk. Humans had already designed a way to bypass such shields decades ago, rendering them obsolete before they were even widely adopted. But instead of revealing this knowledge, she simply nodded, appearing impressed as she took a few notes on her datapad. Beside her, Captain Elias leaned in slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. "We already have phase pulse weaponry that would make their shields useless," he said under his breath. Renna didn't respond. She didn't need to. Elias already knew the answer. Humans never revealed their true hand. Instead, they let the galaxy believe what it wanted to believe, that humans were just another middling species struggling to keep up with the more advanced civilizations. Across the table, a member of the Yulari delegation, a species known for their telepathic abilities, narrowed their many eyes in suspicion. They had long suspected there was more to humanity than met the eye, but even their advanced minds couldn't pierce the layers of deception the humans wove around themselves. Renna met the Yulari's gaze for the briefest of moments, offering a polite smile before looking back down at her notes, appearing completely oblivious to the scrutiny. The discussion shifted to fleet capabilities, various species listing off their advancements in shipbuilding, propulsion systems, and weapons. Renna kept her expression neutral, but inside she was amused. Every species in the room was still grappling with problems humanity had solved centuries ago. Their ships were limited by outdated reactor designs, their weapons primitive compared to what lay hidden within humanity's deep space black sites. But the secret to power was not in flaunting it, but in knowing when to use it and when to let others believe they held the advantage. A Carthan representative, a hulking being with bioluminescent tendrils, let out a booming laugh. "We Carthans have developed plasma torpedoes capable of penetrating the hulls of even the most reinforced dreadnoughts," they announced proudly. Renna feigned surprise, nodding along, as if impressed, knowing full well that human warships had already been equipped with countermeasures that rendered such weapons useless. But no one needed to know that, not yet. Let them believe humans were struggling, let them believe humans were still adapting, because when the time came, when a real threat emerged, humanity would no longer need to pretend. Aliens often mocked human ships for being clunky, slow, and outdated. Their designs lacked the sleek organic curves of the Yulari bioships or the crystalline elegance of the Vorthari cruisers. Their engines didn't hum with the strange exotic energy of the Yelvath constructs. Instead, they rumbled with the familiar pulse of fusion and antimatter reactions, a technology the wider galaxy considered primitive. But that was exactly how humans wanted to be seen: unimpressive, unremarkable, forgettable. Because in war, the greatest weapon was the one your enemy never saw coming. At the heart of human space, hidden deep in classified sectors, lay the true armada, silent and unseen thousands of warships, unlike anything the galaxy had ever known, bristling with weapons beyond comprehension, shields that did not merely absorb energy, but redirected it, engines that could twist the fabric of space in ways no alien scientist could begin to fathom. But these ships would never be shown, never be spoken of, not unless the galaxy forced humanity's hand. On the outer edges of the Galactic Council's reach, at the very fringes of civilization, the smaller species often found themselves caught in skirmishes between larger factions, pirates, warlords, rogue AI fleets. They cried out for aid, pleading for stronger species to intervene, and the mighty empires of the galaxy would deliberate, endlessly debating policies and territorial concerns, while innocent colonies burned. But humans simply sent help, no questions asked, no grand announcements, no demands but tribute or recognition, just a few outdated cruisers with friendly faces and eager hands, while in the void above them cloaked sentinels watched from the darkness, tracking threats before they could escalate, eliminating dangers before they could be named. When the Yelvath Dominion declared war on the fragmented border worlds, no one expected humanity to do anything. They had no formal alliances, no vested interest in the conflict, just another minor species with limited power. The Yelvath fleet launched its first strike, cutting through planetary defenses like they were paper, broadcasting their victory to the entire galaxy, daring anyone to challenge them, and still humanity said nothing. A single Terran relief convoy was caught in the chaos, a small fleet of freighters and medical ships carrying supplies to a recently devastated colony. The Yelvath commander laughed as he hailed them, demanding their surrender, boasting that humans were too weak to resist, too insignificant to even consider fighting back. The transmission cut out for exactly 3.2 seconds before resuming. The Yelvath commander was no longer laughing. His fleet's targeting systems had gone dark, his navigation controls were unresponsive, his weapons refused to fire one by one, his ships lost all power, drifting helplessly in the void. Their crews panicked as invisible hands reached into their systems, disabling them without explanation. They screamed into the void, demanding to know who or what was responsible, but no answer came, no threat, no ultimatum, no warning. The human convoy passed through the battlefield unscathed, continuing their mission as if nothing had happened, offering no comment on the Yelvath fleet, now stranded and powerless, floating in the abyss, awaiting rescue from allies who would never come. By the time the Galactic Council even became aware of the event, the Yelvath had already covered it up, claiming a mysterious solar flare had fried their systems. And humanity simply carried on as if they had never been there at all. Later, in hushed meetings behind closed doors, the Yelvath whispered of ghosts of a force unseen that had dismantled their entire fleet without firing a single shot. But no evidence remained, no proof, no recordings, only a warning passed in secret: never interfere with human affairs, never threaten human ships, and above all, never mistake their silence for weakness. A galactic arms race was underway, every species desperate to outdo the others in weapons, technology, propulsion systems, fleet size, and tactical supremacy. War was a constant undercurrent in the politics of the Council. Some species sought dominance, others sought defense, but all of them believed that power came from open displays of strength. The Drekvar boasted of their indestructible armor, plating the Yulari flaunted their latest advancements in mind-based warfare. Even the Vorthari, who claimed to be above such primitive concerns, had quietly begun developing subspace disruptors capable of rendering enemy fleets helpless. And then there were the humans. They sat in the meetings, nodded along, took notes, acted as if they were barely keeping up. Their ships were dismissed as inefficient, their weapons considered outdated. No one ever suspected the truth, because humans never joined the race in the first place. They had already won before it even started. On the surface, human warships appeared clunky, lacking the aesthetic precision of the more advanced races. Their railguns and missile systems were scoffed at as primitive compared to the directed energy weapons favored by the galactic powers. But no one questioned how those same railguns always seemed to hit their targets with impossible precision. No one asked why human missiles could adjust course mid-flight, as if predicting enemy movements before they even happened. And no one ever seemed to realize that human shields did not simply absorb damage, they adapted, recalibrated, turned incoming fire into fuel for retaliatory strikes. Even among the galactic elite, espionage was a common tool. Every species had spies, double agents, infiltrators, working to uncover the secrets of their rivals. The Yulari, with their telepathic abilities, were especially feared. Their mind readers, capable of extracting hidden knowledge without a single word being spoken. But when they turned their gaze toward humanity, they found nothing. Minds, blank thoughts, carefully layered, as if every human diplomat, engineer, and soldier had trained their entire lives to be unreadable. Some assumed it was simply human nature, their brains wired differently, too chaotic to decipher. Others suspected that humanity had developed countermeasures, a method of blocking telepathic intrusion without the use of technology. Neither assumption was entirely wrong, but neither was completely right. Either humans had mastered the art of deception at a level the galaxy could not even begin to comprehend. They did not hide their secrets behind walls. They let the enemy believe there was nothing to find at all. One of the most vocal skeptics was High Strategist Corlif of the Drekvar Empire. He had never believed the facade of human weakness. Something about them felt off, too convenient, too perfectly mediocre. He had petitioned time and again for a full investigation into human military capabilities, but the Council always dismissed him. Humanity had never started a war, never expanded aggressively, never made any moves that suggested they were a threat. They were just another species trying to survive. But Corlif was not convinced, and so he took matters into his own hands. He sent a fleet of stealth probes into human space, small, undetectable, meant only to observe and report back. For weeks, they watched human colonies, military bases, shipyards, waiting to find some evidence that humanity was more than it seemed. And then, without warning, every single probe went dark. No explosions, no distress signals, no signs of interference. One moment, they were transmitting, the next they were gone. Corlif was furious, demanding answers, but none came. When he confronted the human ambassador at the next council meeting, he was met with nothing but polite confusion. The ambassador smiled, expressed concern, even offered to help locate the missing probes, as if he had no idea what had happened. But Corlif knew that humanity had found his spies, and instead of destroying them, they had simply erased them from existence without leaving a trace. That was the moment Corlif realized the truth. Humanity was not behind. Humanity was not struggling. They were simply waiting, watching, letting the galaxy believe in its own superiority. While they prepared for the day, they would no longer need to pretend. An insectoid species known as the Xalfar had long prided themselves on their military strategy and combat superiority. Their fleets were vast, their soldiers fearless, their technology brutal and efficient. They had won countless wars against rival species, carving out a powerful empire through sheer force. They believed in the rule of strength. And to them humanity was weak, unimpressive, barely worth acknowledging. Yet, still the Xalfar could not understand why the other species tolerated these strange, fragile beings. So they devised a test, a challenge to prove once and for all that humans had no place among the great powers. The Xalfar High Command proposed a war game, a simulated battle to assess combat readiness between species, a friendly contest to showcase strengths and weaknesses. The Galactic Council approved, eager to encourage cooperation and strategic development among its members. The humans hesitated at first. At least that's what they wanted everyone to think. Their representatives exchanged uncertain glances, as if unsure whether they could compete against species that had been waging interstellar war for centuries. Then finally they agreed their fleet would participate. The Xalfar laughed. They had studied human ships, knew their specifications, analyzed their battle reports. Humans relied too much on outdated kinetic weaponry, inefficient shielding, predictable formations. Their fleets were like those of a lesser species, something that belonged in a history archive, not on a modern battlefield. The simulated wargame took place in a neutral system, a vast expanse of empty space dotted with artificial hazards, asteroid fields, ion storms, gravitational anomalies. Each faction was given a fleet. The objective was simple: last one standing wins. The Telfar arrived with a formation perfected over centuries of conquest, a spearhead attack meant to overwhelm their opponents through sheer speed and firepower. The human fleet was small, unimpressive old ships with visible wear and tear, their formations loose and erratic, as if they had no real strategy at all. When the simulation began, the SLFR moved in immediately. Their ships surged forward, unleashing calculated waves of plasma fire, tearing through the battlefield with ruthless precision. Their enemies had fallen to this tactic 100 times before they expected humanity to be no different. But something was wrong. The human fleet did not move to engage, did not attempt to return fire. Instead, their ships drifted, adjusted, repositioned in ways that made no sense to the XLFR strategists. Their targeting systems struggled to lock onto the human vessels. Their predictions failed one after another. Every time they thought they had a clear shot, the humans were already gone, as if they had known exactly where the attack would land before it was even fired. Confusion turned to frustration as the XLVAR commanders barked orders, demanding answers, demanding an explanation for why their prey refused to be cornered. Then, without warning, the human fleet attacked. Not with brute force, not with overwhelming firepower, but with precision. Every shot found a weak point, every maneuver exploited a vulnerability, every system failure seemed to happen at the worst possible moment. It was as if the humans were reading the Zelfar's movements in real time, adapting faster than their minds could process. Entire ships went dark, their engines cut, their weapons disabled, their command lines severed before they even realized what was happening. The XLFR panicked. Their fleet, once a perfect formation, now scattered, breaking apart. As ships collided, lost control, turned their own fire against one another. The humans had not fired the most shots, they had not fielded the strongest ships, but somehow they had won completely, utterly, without question. The simulation ended. Silence filled the council chamber. As the results were displayed, every faction watched the replay, trying to understand what had happened, how humanity had turned the tide without overwhelming force, how they had predicted every move before it was made. The Telfar delegation refused to speak. Their confidence shattered, their pride broken. The humans simply smiled, nodded humbly, as if it had all been a lucky accident. But the truth was clear to those who knew how to see it. Luck had nothing to do with it. A galactic crisis erupted when an unknown force began wiping out border colonies. Entire planets went dark, without warning. No distress signals, no survivors, just silence, spreading like a shadow across the outer rim. At first, the council dismissed the reports, calling them exaggerations, accidents, pirate raids gone wrong. But then the disappearances became impossible to ignore. Entire fleets sent to investigate never returned. The mightiest empires of the galaxy suddenly found themselves powerless against an enemy they could not see, could not track, could not understand. Governments panicked, scrambling for solutions, desperate to unite against whatever force was moving in the dark. The Yulari tried to reach out with their telepaths, but found only void. The Drekvar deployed warships, but they never made it back. The Vorthari relied on their predictive algorithms, but every model, every calculation returned the same result: extinction imminent. And then there were the humans. They sat quietly in council meetings, listening, observing, saying nothing. As species pleaded for assistance, their own colonies were untouched, their fleets undisturbed. The galaxy watched them with suspicion, wondering why humanity had not yet spoken up, wondering if perhaps they knew something the others did not. But when the calls for aid grew too loud to ignore, when the council all but demanded action, the humans finally responded. A single Terran representative stood before the council, his face carefully blank, his voice calm, his words measured. Humanity would help, he said. Humanity would send a fleet, but it would be small, nothing more than a scouting force. They could not promise victory, but they would do their best. The council expected a fleet of warships, battle cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers bristling with firepower, But instead, the humans sent a single outdated battlecruiser, an old Model 1 that had been in service for decades, one that, according to every recorded specification, should have been obsolete. The council was outraged. This was an insult, a mockery. They demanded to know why humanity would not commit more forces, but the human ambassador only smiled apologetically and said this was all they could spare. The battlecruiser, the TNS Phantom, entered the silent expanse of space, where the colonies had once stood. Its transmissions were calm routine, its crew speaking in clipped military tones, as if this were just another mission. But as soon as it crossed the threshold of the dead zone, all contact was lost. No distress beacon, no emergency signal, nothing. Days passed. The council assumed the Phantom was gone, another casualty of the unknown enemy. But then, just as suddenly as it had vanished, it returned. It drifted back into known space, its hull untouched, its systems perfectly intact. And yet something was different. Its crew was silent, their faces unreadable, the ship's logs encrypted beyond even the most advanced decryption methods. No one knew what the Phantom had seen, what it had found, but the moment it returned, the attack stopped. The council demanded answers, but the humans provided none. Their ambassador simply stated that the threat had been neutralized and that there was no further cause for concern. When asked how humanity had achieved this miracle without firing a single shot, without losing a single ship, without revealing a single detail, the ambassador only smiled. Some species pressed further. The Yulari attempted to probe the minds of the Phantom's crew, but found nothing. No fear, no trauma, no memory at all, as if the events of the mission had been wiped from existence. But humanity continued, as if nothing had happened. Their colonies safe, their fleets intact, their people unshaken. Whispers spread through the council chambers, theories, conspiracies, fears. But no one could deny the truth. Whatever force had threatened the galaxy, whatever unstoppable enemy had wiped out entire civilizations, humanity had faced it alone. And whatever they had done, whatever price they had paid, they would never speak of it, not to the council, not to anyone. The council begged for help as the mysterious invaders overwhelmed world after world defenses crumbled. Without resistance, entire fleets vanished. Without a trace, civilizations that had stood for millennia were reduced to nothing but ghost signals echoing in the void. Every species was paralyzed by fear, unable to counter an enemy they could not see, could not predict, could not even begin to understand. But humans simply watched, waiting, listening, calculating. Ambassador Renner sat in the high chamber as the voices of the galactic elite broke into desperate pleas. They needed soldiers, they needed ships, they needed someone, anyone, to take the fight to this impossible enemy. But Renner did not flinch. She did not beg, she did not posture, she only let the silence stretch long enough that even the loudest voices wavered before she spoke softly, firmly. Humanity will assist. Relief washed over the assembly, but then confusion. The humans did not mobilize their full armada. They did not deploy their most powerful warships. They sent one battlecruiser, an old vessel, a relic by the standards of the great empires, the TNS Ironclad, its hull scarred from past battles, its weapon systems outdated, its shields barely enough to withstand modern warfare. The council erupted into outrage, furious at the insult, at the mockery, at the blatant disregard for the threat they faced. But the humans only nodded, as if this decision was not a mistake, not a miscalculation, but something else entirely. The Ironclad entered the dead zone where dozens of fleets had disappeared. Its crew reported nothing but silence, then static, then they were gone. The council despaired. Humanity had failed. Their arrogance had cost them, just as it had cost so many others. But 3 days later, the Ironclad returned, its engines humming, its hull unscathed, its crew calm, methodical, silent. The council demanded answers. What had happened? What had they seen? How had they survived? The human admiral simply stated that the threat had been handled, nothing more, nothing less, no details, no explanations, as if the slaughter of entire worlds could be resolved like an administrative task. The Vorthari were the first to protest, demanding evidence, demanding data, but there was nothing. The logs were erased, the flight records wiped, even the crew had no memories of what had occurred. The Yulari reached out with their minds, trying to break past the walls of silence, but found something they had never encountered before, not emptiness, not chaos, but a void so deep, so absolute, that it swallowed their abilities whole. It made no sense, nothing made sense. Why would humanity send a single outdated vessel? Why would it return undamaged? When no other fleet had survived, why did no one aboard remember what had happened? Why did the attacks suddenly stop, as if the enemy had simply ceased to exist? Theory spread. Was humanity working with the invaders? Had they always been involved? Or was it something worse, something unthinkable? Had humanity known what the threat was all along? Had they been waiting for it? Had they been prepared, while the rest of the galaxy floundered in ignorance? The Council demanded more. They needed to understand, but humans gave them nothing, only vague reassurances. The threat is gone, there is nothing to worry about, go back to your lives, as if entire planets had not burned, as if an unknowable force had not tried to erase them, all as if the war had never even begun. In the silence that followed, a terrifying realization settled over the Council. Humanity had not fought the enemy, they had erased it, removed it from existence so completely that there were no wrecks, no corpses, no remnants, nothing at all. And the worst part was not what humanity had done. It was how effortlessly they had done it. The galaxy did not know how to react. The war that had threatened extinction had ended without a battle, without a trace. Entire civilizations had fallen, yet humanity alone had endured untouched, unshaken, as if the greatest crisis in galactic history had been nothing more than an inconvenience. Rumors spread, whispers of impossible things, of ships that moved without being seen, of weapons that left no debris, of an enemy that had not been defeated but erased entirely. The Council demanded answers, but humanity gave them none. The ambassadors smiled, nodded, assured everyone that there was no longer a threat, but offered no explanations, no technology, no insight into what had happened. The silence was unbearable. Some species tried to investigate. They sent probes into the dead zones where colonies had vanished, where fleets had disappeared. But there was nothing, no wreckage, no ruins, no evidence that anything had ever been there. The space itself felt wrong, as if something had rewritten reality and left behind only emptiness. The Yulari mind weavers reached out, searching for echoes of the lost billions who had perished in the war. They found nothing, no lingering thoughts, no psychic residue, as if those souls had never existed at all. The Vorthari ran simulations using the most advanced predictive models in the galaxy, but the results returned only static, meaningless impossibilities. The Drekvar were the first to act, unable to accept that a species as young as humanity could hold such power. They launched a covert mission, sending a fleet of stealth ships to infiltrate human space. They would find the truth no matter the cost, but just like the others, they never returned. Weeks later, a single Drekvar vessel limped back to Council space, its hull intact, its systems undamaged, yet its crew was gone. The ship was empty, no signs of struggle, no evidence of an attack. It was as if every living being aboard had simply ceased to be. Fear gripped the galaxy. The Council convened in secrecy. Their greatest minds, their most powerful leaders, gathered to discuss the unthinkable. Humanity was no longer seen as an ally, no longer an enigma. There was something else entirely, something beyond comprehension. They had never been weak, never been struggling. They had been hiding, waiting, watching. And when the moment came, they had acted without hesitation, without mercy, without leaving a trace. But what terrified the Council most was not what humanity had done. It was what they might do next. There was no proof of hostility, no threats, no demands. Humanity continued, as it always had, offering trade, diplomacy, cooperation. But now every species looked at them with new eyes. Their words, their smiles, their gestures, all seemed different now, as if a hidden meaning lurked beneath every polite exchange. A choice had to be made. The Council debated in whispers. Should they confront humanity, demand the truth, risk provoking whatever force had erased the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known, or should they do nothing, accept their ignorance, pretend that nothing had changed, and hope that humanity never turned its attention toward them? In the end, they chose silence. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council reached a unanimous agreement. No species would challenge humanity, no further investigations, no accusations, no questions. The official record would state that the enemy had been defeated through joint efforts, that humanity's role had been minimal, that nothing unusual had occurred. And so the galaxy moved on, pretending that they had not seen what they had seen, pretending that humanity was just another species, pretending that the war had been won through conventional means. But deep down they all knew the truth. Humanity had never been trying to win the war. They had been making sure no one ever remembered it had happened at all. The galaxy moved forward, but the fear remained unspoken, yet ever-present. Treaties were signed, trade, resumed, alliances were reaffirmed, but beneath the surface every species watched humanity with newfound wariness, no longer dismissing them as insignificant, no longer assuming their technology was primitive, no longer believing the lie that humanity was just another species struggling to survive. And humanity let them believe what they wanted. The council chamber remained tense in every meeting. No matter the topic, every ambassador chose their words carefully. No one dared to challenge humanity directly. No one dared to suggest that they were anything but the same eager cooperative species they had always been. But in private, behind closed doors, there were whispers, strategies, contingency plans, desperate discussions on how to deal with the impossible. The species that had ended a war without a battle, that had erased an enemy without a trace. Some believed humanity was benevolent, that whatever they had done had been for the good of all, that they had eliminated a threat that would have destroyed them all. Others believed it was a warning, that when the time came when humanity no longer found the galaxy worth coexisting with, they would do the same to everyone else, and no one would be able to stop them. The Ulari still tried to peer into human minds, but found only silence, perfect silence, as if every human had trained from birth to be unreadable. The Drekvar stopped sending spies. Every operative they had ever sent had vanished without explanation or consequence. It was as if humanity did not even acknowledge the attempts, as if they did not consider them a threat at all. The Vorthari ran simulations over and over, attempting to understand how humanity had done it. But every model failed, every equation returned the same answer: it does not compute. Then the disappearances began. Not on a large scale, not entire planets or fleets, just individuals, scientists, researchers, intelligence officers, all of them people who had been too curious, too determined to uncover the truth about humanity. One by one they vanished, no bodies, no evidence, no signs of struggle, their names erased from records, their existence seemingly wiped from reality itself, as if they had never been. The council refused to speak of it. Instead, they distanced themselves from the topic. Humanity was no longer discussed outside of trade agreements and diplomatic formalities. No one dared to ask why humanity had no fear of the unknown, why they had never seemed worried about the enemy, why they alone had come back untouched when so many others had been lost. Then humanity made an offer. A technological exchange, nothing drastic, nothing too advanced, just simple improvements to infrastructure, medicine, ship efficiency, harmless things, gifts of goodwill. The council hesitated. If humanity had the power to erase an enemy without leaving a trace, then what else were they hiding? What knowledge did they possess that they had never shared? Were these gifts truly benign, or were they something else, an invitation, a test, a trap? But refusing the offer would be seen as an insult, and no species was willing to risk being the first to anger humanity. So they accepted. And humanity smiled, as they always did, as if nothing had changed, as if they had not become the most feared species in the galaxy, without ever lifting a weapon, without ever declaring war, without ever needing to say a single word. The council tried to tell themselves that they were still in control, that they were still the governing body of the galaxy, but deep down, they all knew the truth. Humanity was not integrating into the galactic order. The galactic order was integrating around humanity, adjusting, shifting, adapting, without even realizing it. Because if humanity could erase an enemy from existence without effort, without consequence, without explanation, then what else could they do? And worse, what else had they already done? The galaxy pretended nothing had changed, but every species felt the shift, a silent, unspoken reordering of power. Humans still smiled, still traded, still spoke in friendly tones, but now every ambassador, every leader, every strategist looked at them with something new in their eyes, not respect, not trust, not even suspicion. Fear. It was not the fear of war, not the fear of conquest. Those were things they understood, things they could prepare for. What terrified them was the unknown. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy, had not built an empire, had not demanded obedience. They had simply existed, and in doing so had rewritten the balance of power without a single declaration, without a single shot fired. The disappearances continued, not often, not enough to be undeniable, but enough that no one questioned it anymore, enough that every leader, every researcher, every spy who once sought the truth about humanity quietly closed their investigations, deleted their files, burned their notes, as if they had never begun in the first place. It was easier that way. The council still functioned, still gathered, still pretended to govern, but now every decision, every motion, every vote was made with one silent question hanging in the air. What will humanity think of this? What will humanity do if they disagree? And humanity never disagreed. They never argued, never objected, never demanded anything. They simply watched, and that was enough. Some species tried to escape, to leave council space, to carve out their own isolated corners of the galaxy, where they would never have to look into the unreadable expressions of human diplomats, never have to wonder what lay beneath the surface. But somehow every attempt failed. Colonies failed before they could be established. Ships broke down on the edge of explored space. Resources ran out at the worst possible moment. No direct interference, no threats, no sabotage, just bad luck, bad timing, bad circumstances, always just enough to force them back to where humanity could keep an eye on them. The galaxy grew quieter, more obedient, not because of force, not because of law, but because no one wanted to test the limits of human patience. No one wanted to be the first to find out what happened when humanity stopped smiling. One by one, the oldest empires, once proud, once arrogant, came to the same conclusion: humanity had never been hiding in fear, never been blending in, because they were weaker. They had been waiting, watching, letting the others believe in their own power, their own superiority, letting the galaxy think it was the master of its own fate, until the moment came when humanity chose to act. And when that moment came, they did not conquer, they did not threaten, they did not rule. They erased. Without effort, without consequence, without hesitation. And now the galaxy belonged to them, not by law, not by war, but by something far more absolute: inevitability. No one spoke of it, no one acknowledged it, but every species knew deep down humanity was not another race to be studied or understood. There was something else, something beyond comprehension, and the scariest part was not what they had done. It was the fact that they had chosen to let the galaxy live, for now.